Welcome to the WinDevCon 2007 Automatic Upgrade course. We're going to talk about the different way you have to have your application automatically upgrade to the next version and everything that goes around it, from the PCSoft built-in methods to the fully customizable and much more powerful method that you can code yourself. So, as you must know, PCSoft provides in WinDev built-in method to automatically upgrade your project each time a new version goes out. This functionality works either on an internal network using comparison between your current executable and the new executable that is somewhere on the network in a shared directory. Or it also works on a web server with a different mechanism, of course. And this, of course, can be used even for in-house application. You can clearly use that if you are selling software to the general public and they all connect to your server to get the new upgrade. But even for an in-house application where all the users are in the same company, you can use also a web server, which allows for users that are not all the time or never connected to the LAN, like rep guys, to also upgrade regularly. Clearly it's going to be slower if you do it via the web. That's the name of the beast. But it's in both cases just a few checkboxes to check, and if those are enough and the functionality match your need, just use them and you are done. If not, well, coding an upgrade solution is not that complex. As you already saw in my previous courses, I like simple solutions. And again, I developed a small example, a project where you will have all the basic functionality to do your own update. There will be a class for that as usual, and well, basically you will have everything you need. So either you start to use the built-in solution or you want to code it. After the course you will be all set. If you want to use the built-in functions, it's done during the install setup. So when you're creating your install, you will have this step, setup mode 1 or on 2, in which you will be asked, is it a standalone application or is it an application with automatic update, also called live update? And in that case, the text is clearly telling you that the application is automatically updated on the client computers whenever a new version is released via a local network or via internet. So there's nothing to it at that point, you just follow the guide. If you choose to do a live update, which is of course the subject of this course, so that would be the good choice. You then have a second screen in which you have the choice between updating via a shared directory on the local network or update via an HTTP access either on local network or internet. In that case, of course, you need an HTTP server, a web server. The explanation again is all on the screen. So if you choose to update your shared directory of your local network, the reference version of the application must be installed in a shared network directory, which means that basically you're going to choose a reference directory somewhere on your network and fully install your normal application in it. Each time you're going to install this information, this new version, well, all the other users will be able to check via the LAN if there's a new version and eventually copying. They're also telling you that the directory will contain an administration tool for the connected computers as well as the element required to install and update the end-user computers, which means that they are giving you a tool already done to manage who is connected, who is checking, who is working, and who is updated or not. All that already done, which is absolutely great. Now, if you choose to update via an HTTP access, then the setup that you're going to generate in that case must be installed on an HTTP server. And this server will be used to download and update the setup on end-user computers. So now you need to be able to install a setup on an HTTP server, which is a little more complex, of course, but gives you more power in the end. If you choose to work via the web, you at that point have generated your install, and you have to install that on a server. It's either a local server using Apache, by example, or even PCSoft specific upgrade server that is given to you at the same time than the installer. So if you don't even have a web server installed on your LAN, you can use this specific server that will work only for the upgrade of your application. So it's clearly very easy to set up. If you are not using a local server, if you're using a web server somewhere, anywhere in the universe, then you need to remotely install your setup on this server using an FTP mechanism. So that's what you need to have. You need to have an HTTP access for the setup to work, and you need to have an FTP access in order to install it on the server. Once this is done, you can install your application on every machine via a link set up automatically for you on an HTTP web page that is generated for you. So basically what they are doing is they're giving you everything and the kitchen sink. You have the installer by itself. You have eventually a server to locally be able to use that setup. And you have a web page that is generated with a link to download and install your newly created executable. Of course, it's a little complex. Now you're using a web server, HTTP, FTP, and so on, and you'll have to test to figure out all the settings, the right access if local web server, FTP, and matching directory with HTTP and all that. I'm not going to go into details in all that. All that is explained in the help, but you'll still have some testing to do to figure out how to set up that the first time. Once this is done, well, obviously it's going to work as long as you don't change your web server or anything like that. And it's only really a few minutes, or let's say an hour, to set up everything correctly and have everything working. Just a little testing. In the automatic upgrade, if you're using the built-in tools, they even give you a control center. This control center has this face. As you can see, it's called Multi-User Application Control Center. It tells you what applications are installed here, so you can have multiple applications installed on your server, and it will manage that for you. It tells you what is the setup URL. So this URL is what the user has to have to type to install the software in the first place. As you can see here, I did this example in a local configuration. It gives you all the parameters of the functions, how it works and all that. Tells you who is connected to the center, to all this kind of thing in this tab. Also gives you an update service that you can install, status of service for update by HTTP. Here it's not installed because on my machine I have Apache, so I don't need to add their web server kind of tool service to do the update. So I was using Apache, and you can install it from here. So as you can see, it's a very very complete solution. There's even a system that allows you to block the user when you want to install a new version. During this time they cannot work, and so on and so forth. So it's a complete process. It's working. There's no problem with it. As long as it matches what you need to do, it's a really good tool where you don't have anything to develop. So it's an extremely good gain of time. we are going to see what are the pros and cons of this solution compared to a solution that you would develop yourself. Because, well, there must be some cons, otherwise we would just all use the built-in solution, obviously. So, what is good in that solution? And there are many, many good things. The solution is quite complete. As you can see, you have everything already available. It's done, you don't have to do it, so that for me it's a huge plus. I love it when I don't have anything to code and I just can click on a few checkboxes and it's working. There is nothing to code, and you just have basically to learn the steps. So you take a few hours, let's say, to test that, try it out, use it, and you will see there's nothing to it really, just learn the steps. It's also a very good thing that it creates automatically for you a web page for install and download. So even if you have zero experience in web development, well, you just need to be able to point to that web page somewhere and you're good to go. Now, the thing that I don't like about the solution, because of course there are some. Well, the web page that is created is not integrated in any way with your website. If you already have a website, you have a template, you have a graphical schema that you're using for it, and this web page does not respect any of it, is not able to work with any template that I know of. Which means that you will have, if you already have a website, to not use the web page, look eventually at the link that is the web page and do your own web page, which means that the create a web page works only for very simple cases. Now, the installer that the user will download on this web page is not a full installer. It's called install.exe, and it's in fact a preloader that is downloading other things. If you remember, at some point, some of you who used Netscape, the browser, was doing exactly that. It was downloading a very small executable, only a few hundred kilobytes, and you would say, wow, this thing has been compressed like crazy. Well, in fact, no. You would download that, and when you would use it, try to install, then it would download for a good hour your 37 megabyte program, which is a methodology that I particularly really don't like, because what I want to do is be able to download the thing once and for all, and then run the install when I want, and not have at that point to again download, because at that point perhaps I'm not connected anymore. And if nothing tells me that this is just a preloader, I have no way of knowing it the first time. So it's just a way of complexifying things that has no good reason. They could have directly created an install.exe. It was fully downloadable, and that's it. They chose that method. I don't know why. I personally don't like that aspect of the implementation. Then again, this thing is quite complete, and because of that it is just too complex for some cases. You just need a simple install, and this thing is doing lots of things around it that you perhaps don't need. And of course it's not enough complex to cover all the cases. There's no way to do that. That's the problem when you're trying to build a generic tool. You have to choose some kind of implementation, and it will never match all the needs of all users. So it doesn't cover all cases, that's for sure. By example, there is absolutely no link to your protection schema that you just started to code using my previous course examples. If you're using the automatic upgrade that they're giving you, you cannot link your protection schema to it. There is also no link to any kind of licensing schema. So if, again, you want to implement the full lanyard, the protection, the licensing, and the update all built in together, well, you will have to code that yourself, clearly. There's also no link to a replication schema. We saw in the replication course that it's possible to replicate many things, including the upgrade of your application. Just a quick recall, but if a user is trying to replicate to the central system, and the central system detects that this user is using an older version of the application, it can refuse the packet, send down as an answer packet the whole installer, and have the user automatically install using its regular replication schema, not having to code anything else than that. So clearly this would not work also with the automatic built-in tools. And also there is no load management for the server. What do I mean by load management? Well, imagine this situation. You are creating a software for a company, and this company has, let's say, 5,000 users. They all live in the United States, and basically they're all on the East Coast, which means that they all arrive at the office about at the same time, 8-ish on Monday morning, and during the weekend you just put in place on your server a new version of the executable. At 8 o'clock in the morning, everybody starts his own computer. 5,000 requests to the update server are sent at the same time, and you have 5,000 users trying to download the same installer at the same time. Well, I hope that you have a very big server with a very big pipe, because this is going to be really bad. Most of the time you will get a few users being able to very slowly download, and all the other ones taking their phones and calling your technical support. Clearly that's not something that you want to do. So if you have a big server farm and lots of hardware, and you have all the money that you need to implement hardware load management, then it's not a problem. You know how to deal with that. It's basically a question of saying, okay, I have 5 or 10 or 50 servers that are used for that, and I have a load balancer hardware which is in fact sending the request to these different servers. That's what happened on some website when you first type a URL and you see the URL is changing to www.27. your normal URL. It just was redirected to another server in order to balance the load between all of them. Well, if you don't have this hardware facility and all the money in the world to deal with that, there are easy ways to manage load between servers using just software, and we're going to talk about that later. But of course, if you use the automatic upgrade, there's nothing built in for that, and you cannot do that. And again, you have no control. You have heard me talking about control many times already. And yes, when I'm talking about coding, I am a control freak. I need to control as many things as I can, because that's where the real power of the coder is. If you're not able to control how things are done, you cannot satisfy the requests of all your customers. You all know that. So control is an extremely important of our life. Clearly, if you're using the built-in tools, it has to fit your need. If your need is just not perfectly in phase with that, well, you have no control over the way it's done, so you have no way of managing that. Clearly, now is the time when we talk about doing it yourself. For that, we are first going to see what we have to manage to achieve that task. There is a connection problem that we have to consider. How is the user side and the server side are going to talk together? One way of doing that is of course the shared directory. If you are working only in an in-house application and everybody's on the LAN, that's the easiest way. Then of course you have the HTTP possibility that is used by PCSoft. And of course you have also the possibility to do that via FTP. So if you have access to any kind of these three things, you can manage a connection. The second point is to see what kind of information you're going to manage in order to achieve an automatic upgrade. Some of them are obvious, and some of them perhaps you never thought of it as need or even possibilities, because you can go very far if you start to code that yourself and do very interesting things. So clearly the first information that you need to manage is the version, and I'm writing version with a S at the end. It's a plural because you can manage several versions of the same application online at the same time, and let the user choose whether it wants to update or not this particular version or not. You also need to manage the dates of each version in order for the user to know that, okay, this is a version that was published yesterday, or a version that was published 3 months ago, I should update, and so on and so forth. A very interesting information to have is the size of each version that is available, because remember that you are dealing with people in some case that are very poor connection to the web. They have a dial-up connection, and if they see that a new version is 27 megabytes, perhaps they're going to say, well, I'm not going to download that now from the hotel, I'm going to do that next Monday when I'm at the office on the big pipe. That's one of the things that you can manage if you do that yourself. It's not managed in any built-in facility that we have. There's also another thing that you can manage at this point. It's the content of each version. Clearly, it's perfectly possible to have the application look on the server, see what is new, list all the versions that are available, download the text with the content of each version, and then let the user decide if they want to download this version or not based on what's in the version. If, by example, it's a version that makes improvement only in the accounting department, the guy who's not in the accounting department has absolutely no interest in that version and doesn't want to download it. That's again some kind of a level of flexibility that you can add to your upgrading process. Another thing that you can also manage is the importance of your upgrade. Is it an upgrade that is mandatory? By example, you change the analysis schema, so there's no choice, everybody has to have it. Or is it a comfort version? A comfort version being, okay, I've enhanced the way the billing input is done. Now you have this wonderful list box that gives you more information that you had before and all that. But, well, you can perfectly live with the previous version if you don't want to install it now. You don't have the time, you don't have the bandwidth, fine with me. You can still continue to work. Another thing that you can manage also at this point in the information department is the probable download time. Well, you know what the size of the upgrade is, you know the speed of the bandwidth based on the previous bandwidth that the user had last time, so you can easily calculate, well, this download should be done in about 27 minutes. Well, I have 27 minutes. Now, if the answer is, well, 3 hours and a half, I'm supposed to leave for my next meeting in 45 minutes. I don't have the time. It's something that is extremely appreciated by the users when you give them this kind of information. Another point that you can manage also at this level is either users that are concerned or groups that are concerned. Clearly, some new version of executable are done to solve some problems. Again, if you are solving bugs in the accounting department only, well, the guy who's not in the accounting department, who is in the stock doing his inventory and all that, doesn't care and doesn't want to spend half an hour waiting for the download to finish before he's able to work. So if you can manage in your upgrade process who is concerned, you can even have the upgrade displayed only if the user is in a group that is concerned or is in the list of the people who are concerned by that upgrade. So you can have suddenly your list of upgrades that is different from one user to the next one. And people are not concerned, are not bothered by a screen asking them if they want or not. You can go to that level of comfort for your users. Then you can also manage free or not free, and the price and a link to buy and so on. By example, you are doing a general public software, so everybody can download your free version. Free version is a reduced version. I'm not even talking about a trial version. I'm talking about a real free version that does many things, but not all the things that your paying version does, of course. And each time there is a new version available, either for the free one or the paying one, well, you will have this software looking on the upgrade server and downloading information and saying, well, there's this new version, this one is free, it does that and that yours doesn't, so you can download it. But there's also this other version that is not free, that does all that your current version doesn't, and you can buy it for the very little price of this by clicking on this link. And this link can put the user directly on your online buying server. All this can be done very easily in your upgrade system if you code it yourself. So you can add the link to buy the update. It's now time to talk about the logic of building your own automatic upgrade system. So the first thing that you're going to do is to create a normal standalone installer. You're not using anything automatic from the PCSoft tool, just creating a regular installer of the auto-extractable executable type. Just nothing special at that point. Of course, you're going to give it a specific name, by example, wd-protected10installer.exe. Why? Well, because, as I said, we want to be able to manage several updates of the same program at the same time. So if you are all calling them wd-protected-installer or just installer or install.exe, obviously, if you try to manage several of them in the same place, you won't be able to. Here we have the name of the program, we know it's an installer, and we have also the version that is installed, all that in the name. So it's very easy to identify and manage several of them at the same place at the same time. The second step is to create a text file describing this version, this upgrade. The text file is going to be very small, and the content of this text file will depend on your needs. Remember what we said about all the different type of information that you can manage in an upgrade. In theory, that's exactly where you're going to put all of that. Being it the version, the price, if it's free or not, if it's for what group or not, all that is going to be stored in a way or another in that small text file. Of course, you're going to give it a specific name too, for the exact same reason that we need a specific name for the installer itself. We need to manage several text files with several installer, and therefore each of them needs to have a specific name in order not to be written on by another one. By example, you can name it wdp10.txt, and in it, in that case, you will need to have a link to the installer. Or another method would be to call it wd-protected10installer.txt, and in that case there's no link needed to the executable, because the name is the same. You just have to replace the .txt by .exe and you know what to download. So it's two different methods that both work. It's up to you to do it the way you prefer. Then you're going to create a text file that will contain your upgrade menu. This one will have a generic name, by example update.txt, and will contain in fact a description of each available version, each available installer in your update system, and for each of them a link to the specific text file that we just described in step 2. So basically you have a generic menu of all your updates, and for each of them you have a link to the details of each update. Of course, contrary to the previous one, this text file will be modified each time there is a new version. The second step that we have, creating a text file describing one particular version, of course, is created once with a version and will not change, because this version will not change. There will be another version that will be created. So when you're creating your text file, you have one for a version and the general one that is modified each time you're adding a new version. Then the next step is to upload all three, the installer, the text file describing the installer, and the general menu on your server in the same directory, obviously. Then you're putting all your installer, by example. And of course, it would be a good idea on your website, because I'm sure at that point you have a website, to always have a link to the last full installer. Clearly you don't want to have a link to the last patch or to the last partial installer, but to the last full installer. That's kind of on the side of the automatic upgrade, but well, your new user will need to be able to install as easily as possible. And I don't think that you want to do what PCSoft is doing on that aspect, making you install the first version, then all the updates one after the other on top of it. That's a lot of download and a lot of install, and we all know that it's not very practical. So creating a full install regularly and having a link to it is always a good idea, in my opinion. There is also the logic of the program side to consider. So in the program, clearly you have to check for updates. You can do that at any different time. By example, when the program starts, in the help menu you can have a check for update that the user starts manually. You can also do that on the timer. Remember one thing. If you do that at startup, you should do that in a separate thread or in a separate executable. You don't want your user to be blocked, not being able to use the program because you have a timeout in your connection to your update system. That would be very impractical for the user. Imagine that your user is using a laptop and has no connection, and he's locked for 20 seconds or 200 seconds, depending on the timeout that you put in your software, and during this time it can't work. That's certainly not going to be something he's going to be happy about. So whatever you do, remember, people are not always connected. You have to manage that problem. The way you're going to manage your update system is via a hard-coded link. So that's the only thing that you have to hard-code in your program. A link to your menu file, the now infamous update.txt. It can also be, if you want to do something that is more powerful, it can be a link to a web page managing the updates and doing dynamic load management. How that would work? Well, it's a web page that you're going to create using WebDev, by example, your preferred web development tool. And you're going to use HTTP request to directly ask this page about the update.txt file. This page is going to dynamically generate the update.txt, and in fact the only thing it's going to do is change in this update.txt what web server should be used for the update, the link to the installer to download. With a system like that, you can, without any hardware, have just one small website with a WebDev application, and this application is going to know what server were used last time. Obviously, it's just information that you store in your parameter file, and we'll have a list of all the web server on which you have installed your program updates. Doing that, it will just send the next user to the next server, and so on. This will allow you to very easily balance the load on many servers when you have many users. Now, what happens if you don't have a web server, or if you just don't know how to develop for the web? Well, there is always the load balancing solution for the poor, as I call it. If you are in any of those cases, but you still have access to a different machine to put your installer on it, by example, very inexpensive host giving you 3 GB of download every month and so on, so you can take that and pay only a few bucks for each of them. So you can have, for let's say less than $100, 20 different server ready to deliver your updates. It can be a very inexpensive solution. But in the previous solution, you still need a web server, web dev, and all that to manage what is going to be called each time. So the solution for the poor is just to make a change in the updates.txt file and have only one of them. But in this one, you will have not one link to one installer, but 5, 10, 20, depending on the number of servers that you have. And your program, once he downloaded this small updates.txt, will just randomly select one of the, let's say, 20 different servers. Of course, random doesn't mean that it's going to perfectly balance the load, but if you have lots of users that will access this at the same time, statistically it will balance the load. And it will always be better than having 5,000 users accessing the same server at the same time. So it's a solution that can work, that will certainly improve your solution, and that you can in fact very easily also scale up by just adding a new server, changing the update.txt by adding a new link in it, and automatically it's balancing on that new server also. So it's very easy to manage too. So clearly this solution with the web server can manage the load between as many servers as you want, but you can also do that with the solution for the poor, as I told you. This link to the updates.txt can be done via HTTP request if you have a web server. Of course, it could also be done via FTP if you have no website available, or if you prefer not to use HTTP. By FTP it's going to be a little longer to code because you have the connection to manage and all this kind of thing. HTTP request, it can be done in just one line, so I kind of prefer that solution most of the time for that. At that point we have the menu downloaded either from a static page or a dynamic web dev page, and we can read it. So we read the menu, and after that we check inside that menu if new version is available. That's easy enough. There's no mystery here, just read the text file and so on. Of course, now that you have MySQL program class, you're going to have everything organized in your text file with that format, so it's going to be very easy to check what is the last update and so on and so forth. And yes, all that is done in the example that I prepared for you, so you will be able to see that really working with updates and so on. A good idea is also to store this information in a local parameter record. By example, this allows you to download information about the update and say, no, I don't want to do anything now, but propose it to me later, tomorrow, next working day, or whatever you want to manage. And you don't have to connect to do that. The user can calmly read all that information when he has the time, decide what updates he wants to download, and schedule that download to be done automatically at night when he's not working. All that is perfectly manageable. There's absolutely no problem for you to code that. At that point, you can either also propose the download or force the download depending on your application and what you want to do. In some company, you're going to say when the new version available, the user cannot do anything else but download. He won't be able to work if it doesn't download the new version. And then you have the opposite direction where you're saying, okay, there's a new version, but it doesn't mean that you cannot work for now and download later, tonight, tomorrow, whenever you're ready. Depends of what update it is. If you're connected all the time to the main database and there is a schema update, database schema update, in that case you have to force the download. It's not possible to work before that. Now, if you're working via replication, nothing prevents you to work locally and synchronize only later. All that is depending of your application and what you're doing. Of course, as I was saying, you can block the program execution if you are in the case of database schema modification and you are working directly on that database. There's no way you're going to be able to work with an old version. So you can block. You can also allow the user to choose updates he wants or he doesn't want. By example, there can be several patches that are available for different group of users. So the user can choose which one he wants to download and install. Or this can be done, of course, automatically if you know this user is in that group and that update is for that group, so you can just propose the ones that match the user. There can also be several full install. It's the example I was giving you earlier about, well, you have the free version and then you have another full install where the user has to pay. And in that case, you can have a link directly to the web page where he will get his new license key after he just paid for it. Of course, in this menu file, you can also have message. There's nothing that prevents you to implement a way to display information. You are already displaying information about each update. Well, it could be not an update, just several message. Message being, well, please be aware that the central database will be inaccessible between this time and that time for maintenance, by example. Of course, you can also send them commercials, ads. It's exactly the same thing, it's just the text that you display. So now you have implemented a way to use your upgrade automatic system to display commercials in the free version that you are giving away as a hook to your paying version. And in this ads, an example could be a list of other software from your company. You are giving away one free software, and each time the program is looking for an update for this free software, at the same time it will download information about, well, this paying software, that paying software, and so on and so forth. So you can build a whole commercial campaign using that system. Of course, you can also display the joke of the day or anything like that. It's really up to you what you're going to display. I'm just trying to open your mind to many possibilities that you have as soon as you are creating this kind of system. So this system is going to work if you are developing a software for one company. But it's also going to work if you're working in the shareware world. We're using that kind of schema to sell your software. In fact, it's going really to work in all cases. It's really up to you to open it to the need that you have. So the complexity of what you're going to build really depends of what you want to achieve, what your project need in your particular case. Now is the time to talk about the project that you're going to use to test all this theory. Well, I created a project called WD Update, and in this project I implemented several parts of your update mechanism. It's the basic update mechanism. I didn't go into lots of trouble to implement everything that we talked about, but it will give you really the basis to build what you need depending on your case. So you'll be able in it to prepare the information. By preparing the information, of course, I mean creating the text files both for one particular update and the menu one. And you will also have the mechanism that allows any of your program to check for update. And of course, you also have the mechanism to download an update. I didn't create the mechanism to install the update, but basically it's just running the executable with shell execute and stopping your own program. And 2 lines of code to add. I'm sure you can all do that. So that's what we're going to look at now in the how to use it and how to really implement the corresponding code. WD Update is working. I in fact already prepared information for it, uploaded on one of my server, and I did put link to real file that you can download. So the whole mechanism is available and you can test it directly from your computer. It will work and it will download several of my programs, shareware and utilities, and you will see how you can modify that code for your own need. We are now in the WD Update project, and we are going to start the project in order to see what you can do with it. So again, I grouped in that same project part of the system that will be done on your side and on the customer side. So the first thing is to manage the update. That's what you are doing when you are preparing to put in place a new update for any of your software. This is a very basic UI. Here I have in fact a display of the information that is stored in the parameter file for all my updates. So everything concerning the update system is in one record and managed using these 3 buttons and these few fields. That's all there is to it. So what did I choose to manage in my system? This number is the number of the update. Each update is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in order to be recognized by the system. Very simple. Then here there is a version information in which you are going to put your version string however you want to format it, 1.0a, 1.00, 0.03, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. That's the version information. Then there is the title of the update that will be displayed for the user. So this has to be a friendly information. Then we have a radio button system allowing me to choose between mandatory update and comfort update. Then the link for the download. This has to be a URL, http www and so on. And then a text to describe in detail what's in the update, what are the conditions, who is concerned, whatever you want to add in it. So this is the part that is done by you to prepare update info and message. If we have a look at what is stored in the parameter record, well, we have here the last update information. Each time we are writing a new one, this thing is checking, the code is checking if it's something that was not written before, and if I write a number 4 here, the last update will come to 4. Then for each update we have U1 type, U1 description, U1 link, U1 title, U1 version, and of course U2 for each field and U3 for each field. So each separate update is described using U as update and 1, 2, 3 and so on. It's the number that is here. So if I want to look what is in the update 1, just put a 1 here, read, and the read button is going to extract from this the information in a usable form. So the number 1 is version 1.0e of the title is FHtimer. It's a comfort update. The link to download is from fabriceharary.com download FHtimer installer exe, and the description: FHtimer is a friendly timer utility allowing you, and so on and so forth. Here I choose to implement something that is in fact ads commercial for several of my software. You could do that with all the different options that we already discussed. If we look at the second one, again, just do a 2, read, and here we have the same thing for FHPreScreen and so on. And the number 3 is for a regular expression utility that was already downloadable from my website, from my blog, if you are working on regular expression in WinDev. So this is the 3 different updates that I created. So the read and write allows you to enter information and get information about one specific update, and the prepare file button allows you to create the text file. So you're going to create, if you're with number 3 here, you're going to create the description file for the update number 3, and also the general the menu description based on all the things. So if we do that, the files have been written in C, document and setting, Fabrice Harary, application data, WD update. Again, this application is using my system I already described to you with CL project, CL program and so on, and is working in a directory that is available in all systems including Vista. So it's an application data, WD update. Let's have a look at what we have in that file. So if we're going in C, document and settings, Fabrice Harary, application data, WD update, we have here the different files that I was talking about. So here I choose to have my file called wdupdate.txt, that's the menu, and then wdupdate v1, wdupdate v2, wdupdate v3 for each different update. So that's how I organize this system. If we look in the menu, what do we have? Well, information saying that there are 3 updates available in that file, so this way our code will be able to loop through all of them. The first title is FHtimer, the first version is 10e, and the first type is 2, which means that it's comfort. Then the second is FHPreScreen, version 10d, comfort, regular expression utility, version, and comfort. That's all there is in the menu, very simple, very small. Then if we look at what we have in, by example, the update 3 description, here we have, okay, the title again, the version, the description. So here we have the whole thing, description, several lines separated by carriage return line feed. It's my regular parameter format, the same way that everything else, and the link for the download is here. So everything is ready. At that point, what you have to do is to take all that and upload that on the server. So of course, you also have to upload these different files that need to be there for the download. And that's it. You upload and you're good to go. You're going to be able to give your user the program that is going to use that. The second tab, check for update, is of course the part that is done on your customer side in your own software. So here I have just a button that check for the updates, and this button just does a call to my class in which the HTTP request is managed. As you can see, I'm here displaying information in a table. You could of course do that the exact way you want. And I have my update number, my title, friendly title, the type, comfort or mandatory, and the corresponding version, the exact thing that was in the menu. Now if I want to see the details for that one, I click on details, and you can see I have two different options here. Let's try the first one. Here is the full information, which is in fact the full content of the file that is taken from the server. You can see that it's the whole thing. Oh, I don't have a splitter here, so you'll have to just look here. Everything is there. And if, by example, I just want the description, that's another way of doing the thing, and I have the friendly description. That's what you would do in your own software. The delay between the click and the information appearing is because I'm getting that via the web on my server. It's a real update mechanism. I'm not cheating in any way. It's going to my server to get the information. So if I want to then download this particular update, I just click on download, and at that point it's going to take a certain amount of time, of course, because well it's a several megabyte file to download, and well I don't have the fastest of the connection. That's one of the downsides of living on a remote island, but you can see that here the gauge is starting to move for the download. So it is working, and you can go to the end of the file. Okay, now that it got the beginning of the file, it's going faster. So here I'm downloading the file, and at the end of that download I will have a message saying you have now downloaded the file in this directory. In your own update mechanism, you could at that point say to the user, okay, your new update has been downloaded, it's ready to install. Do you want to install it now, or do you want to install it next time you stop or start the program? It's up to you how to manage that. Running the install by itself is really a question of doing a shell execute on the string that is returned to you by the system. I nearly talked long enough to have the full download done, so we should be able to see the message coming up very soon. As you can see, it's a very simple mechanism again. I tried to cut it in small steps that are very easy to understand, and you shouldn't have any problem to implement that in your own software depending on your own need. We are at the end of the download. Let's see what happened. Okay, try to get the last few bytes. And here we are. So the downloaded file is available at, and again, as you can see, I downloaded it in my application data directory in order for this mechanism to work even on Vista with the UAC mechanism working. So at that point, that's where you would propose to install it and do it automatically. The last part in that, and yes, you can also download the FH-Prushkin and FH-Timer. They are real program, shareware program that you can download, install, and play with them. All that is really working. The last part is again the parameter tab, same one than in the previous program, where you have update menu, and you can read that is your full update mechanism parameter here in one memo field. So it's very, very compact, very easy to integrate in your own program. We're now going to have a look at the source that is behind all this mechanism. Again, there's nothing really complex there. First thing we're going to look at is the project initialization code. Once again, as you can see, it's very short. It's the same thing than previously. The CL project, the object declaration, then the CLDB object declaration. Remember, we are using here a parameter file that is in Hyperfile, so I need a database management. Then we are creating an parameter object, and we are doing that only because we have this extra tab that access the parameter directly, any type of parameter, because after that we are declaring the CL update project. And because CL update is using the parameter file as the basis to record information and read information, CL update in fact already inherits from CL param. So if you don't need this extra tab with the param file, you don't even need that declaration here. But we'll talk about that in more detail in the object-oriented programming course later today. Now let's have a look at the window by itself. Well, I can close this one, no need to clutter. Okay, let's look at the first tab. In the first tab, basically we have a few edit fields and 3 buttons. The first button, read. Well, perhaps we can look at the window init first. Window init, what are we doing? We are reading the updates list in the CL update class. So there's one method already in the class that reads that. And how? Just doing a param read of a specific value in the parameter file. That's all there is to it. And displaying that in the edit menu here. That's this field. So once we have this whole list of information on the updates, here we are displaying it because of course it's a demonstration. In a real case we would have this list in a string, and then all this code would work from the screen and not from the field itself. The read by itself is very simple. We are doing first a line read of the last update information. Well, if the last update is the number 3 and you are asking to read the update 15, there is a problem. So that's why we are first checking what is the biggest update available, and then checking if you are asking for something that is bigger than that. We're also checking if you are asking for something that is less than 1, because the updates are starting at 1, obviously. And if all that is correct, then we are just using again line read to get the different field content: description, link, title, version, type. At that point you should be familiar with the line read functionality. So it's very easy to extract information that is formatted in that field with a string. And of course we have the radio button also to set up. That's all in the read button. Write button does the exact same thing. So I'm not going to go into detail again. Last update, check if it's bigger than this and that. Get all the information, put it in the field, and then write the information in the file using this param_write method in the CL update class. Again, nothing to it there. A little more interesting is the prepare file. So this code is supposed to prepare 2 different text files. So what do we do in here? As you can see, there's not a lot of code in here, which means that the code is somewhere else already done for you. So we are again testing if we are asking to do something that is not possible, if the update that was requested is bigger than the maximum one. And once that is done, we are just calling write update file, and that's it. Where are we writing? Well, it's using the get data dir that is coming from CL project, writing in the wd update.txt. So you can directly change the name of your menu file here, just in the call. You don't have to go in the class to do that. And of course, which update is concerned by this call. Let's have a look in the class method itself. So here we are. I'm going to reduce everything else in order to be able to see everything at once. The header, always you have all the information, so there's no problem there. Let's have a look. So the first thing is the parameter file full name, the path and file name, and the update number. Put that in local variable. Then asking for the version file name. This is a method that will read in the full file name and automatically build the corresponding file for this specific update. Just a method that I built. You can do it any other way you want, of course, but it's already there. So at that point we have the name of the file in which we have the menu and the name of the file in which we want to write the specific version information. To be sure that we have the last information available, we are reading the update list. And then this method is, of course, not only returning this information, but storing it in a member of the class. So after that, we are working from this class member, class variable, and getting the different information, title, description, version, and so on. And we are putting all that using line write in a string that will be the content of the file that we want to write. Then fsave text to write this information directly in it. So very simple. Then we are going to prepare the menu file. So we have to loop on all versions to extract only relevant information, number, title, version. Everything else is in the DL file. Everything is in the commands once again. We are looking for the biggest update, last update information, and then we're going to loop on that and extract what we need, write it again in a string, and then writing in the file. Again, really nothing complex here, and you don't even need to look at it because it's already working. So that's all there is in this third button. We are now going to have a look at the client side of the update mechanism. The first thing, of course, is in the check for update button. And as you can see again, everything is already done for you in the class, so you just have to call the corresponding method to manage that. The method is called check for update, extremely original. Again, follows the good development strategy course that I made for you. And in this check for update, the only thing that you have to know is this hard-coded string with the URL of the file you want to get. Of course, we are also giving the method the name of the window and the table in which the information has to be displayed in order for the class to be as independent of the UI as possible. Again, following the rules I told you about. The class method itself is, again, not very long, not very complex. It's basically setting a timeout of 20 seconds in order for you to be able to get out of the problem if you cannot connect to the server, and then doing a HTTP request of the link that was sent to you. Here we are using just the WD update name as the user agent. It's just a question of telling the system on the other side that it's not a browser that is accessing this file, but your update management system, which allows you, by example, to refuse access to the file if you're using a dynamically generated file and if the user agent is not correct. So that's just something that you can do. There's absolutely nothing mandatory here. Again, management of the error, it's absolutely normal, regular. You already know that. We've seen that several times in all the classes. Then we got the file and we use it. We are putting the result given by HTTP GET result in a string, deleting everything that is in the table whose name was sent as a second parameter, and then for we're going to do a loop on each update one after the other and read for each of them using line read, the title, the version, the type, and adding that in the table. That's all there is to it. So this is the only code that you have to call to populate your table. Of course, you can display that the exact way you want or not display it and act immediately on it if you see that there's a mandatory update. It's really up to you to organize that the way you need to. If we want to have a look at the detail button, it's basically again just calling get update detail from the class and again passing the main URL. It's the only one that you have to know because this method is going to first download that file, then get the second file based on that. And the only difference in this if not is, well, as you can see, if we are retrieving the information, then based on the detail or full information that we want, we are just extracting the information. So let's look at the get update detail. It's even smaller than the other one. First we get the main file and then we retrieve the second one. That's it. Nothing to it. The menu file, and we use it, update details, that's it. As you can see, calling an internal method get version file name from the main one. So really nothing to it. The download is also done by a method called getUpdateTarget. Again, it's the same main file that is sent. And of course, again, we are asking for one particular download. So in the method itself, again, HTTP request is used to get the main file. And that's it. With the progress bar, we are downloading the corresponding file. Absolutely nothing doing, using fsftext to save the result of the HTTP request. As you can see, each of these code is extremely simple in itself. Once you have that logic in place, you can very easily transform that to match your need, whatever they are, in the update domain. That's all there is in really the update mechanism. You will be able to enhance that many different ways. I'm sure that you'll find things that I didn't think of. So have fun and enjoy your automatic update system.